To understand how we got here, we need to rewind to a moment most people have never heard about. A quiet dinner in 2017, 2 years after OpenAI was founded, where the first real cracks appeared between Elon Musk and Sam Altman. By this point, OpenAI had already burned through a staggering amount of money. The research was promising, but the bills were suffocating. Musk had donated roughly $100 million, but even his deep pockets had limits, especially when those pockets were also funding SpaceX, Tesla, and half a dozen other ventures. OpenAI needed a new source of cash, and it needed one fast. Musk's proposal was simple, and from his perspective, perfectly reasonable. Merge OpenAI into Tesla. He argued that Tesla's computing resources and financial power could solve the funding crisis overnight. He even suggested that he could serve as CEO, steering both companies toward a future where AI and electric vehicles worked hand in hand. On paper, it was efficient. In reality, it was a trapdoor dressed up in the language of cooperation. Altman and the other board members rejected the idea unanimously. Their reasoning was straightforward. If one person controlled both the funding and the direction of OpenAI, the nonprofit's independence would be meaningless. The whole point of the organization was to prevent any single entity from monopolizing AI. Handing it to Musk would simply replace Google's potential monopoly with Musk's actual monopoly. Musk was furious. Not the loud, public kind of fury he was known for on social media. This was the quiet, calculating kind. He began distancing himself from the organization. He reduced his donations. He stopped attending board meetings. By 2018, he had officially resigned from the board, citing potential conflicts of interest with Tesla's own AI development. That was the public explanation, and it was technically true, but the real reason was far more personal. He felt betrayed by the people he had bankrolled. Now here is what most people miss about this moment. Musk's departure did not just create an emotional wound, it created a financial vacuum. OpenAI was suddenly missing its biggest donor, and the remaining funds were draining fast. The organization faced a brutal choice: either shrink the ambition and accept that they would never compete with Google's resources, or find a new source of money that was big enough to keep the dream alive. Altman chose the second option, and this is where the story takes its darkest turn. In 2019, just 1 year after Musk's departure, OpenAI announced a radical restructuring. It created something called a capped profit subsidiary. In plain language, this meant that OpenAI would remain a non-profit on the surface, but underneath, it would create a for-profit company that could accept investments and generate returns. The cap meant that investors could earn a maximum of 100 times their money. After that, any additional profits would flow back to the nonprofit for the benefit of humanity. It sounded clever. It sounded balanced. It sounded like a compromise that preserved the mission while solving the money problem. But in practice, it was a trapdoor. Because the moment you invite profit-seeking investors into a mission-driven organization, the mission is no longer in the driver's seat. The investors are. And the very first investor to walk through that trapdoor was one of the most powerful corporations on the planet, Microsoft. Microsoft's initial investment was $1 billion. That is a staggering sum, but what they received in return was even staggering. Exclusive access to OpenAI's most advanced models, the right to commercialize the technology through Microsoft's own products, preferred partnership status that effectively locked out every other major tech company. In exchange for solving OpenAI's money problem, Microsoft had quietly become its landlord, its business partner, and its most powerful stakeholder all at once. And the word open in OpenAI, it became a fossil, a relic of a promise made in a different era by different people with different intentions. The source code was no longer shared freely. The research papers became less detailed. The models were locked behind commercial agreements. The nonprofit that was supposed to belong to everyone now belonged, in every practical sense, to Microsoft. Musk watched all of this from the sidelines with growing rage. The organization he had helped create to prevent corporate monopoly over AI had just handed itself to one of the largest corporations in history. It was, in his view, the ultimate betrayal of everything OpenAI was supposed to stand for. But was Musk truly the wounded idealist he claimed to be, or was his anger rooted in something less noble, the fact that someone else had seized the throne he wanted for himself? That question is more important than you might think, because the answer reveals the truth about both men, and the truth, as you are about to discover, is far uglier than either side wants you to see.
Now, at this point in the story, most people assume they understand the situation. They think this is a simple tale of two billionaires fighting over money and power. One side says Musk is the villain who wanted to steal a nonprofit. The other side says Altman is the traitor who sold it to Microsoft. Pick your team. Choose your hero. But what if I told you that both versions are a distraction? What if the real story is not about who controls OpenAI, but about a safety system that was designed to protect all of us, and how it was quietly dismantled piece by piece while everyone was watching the drama instead? Let me explain how OpenAI's safety structure was originally designed. When the organization was founded, its charter included a remarkable clause. If another organization was closer to building AGI safely, OpenAI would stop competing and help that organization instead. Read that again. They literally promised to surrender if someone else could do the job better and more safely. The mission was not about winning. It was about making sure humanity survived. To enforce this promise, the nonprofit board held absolute power over the company. They could hire or fire the CEO. They could shut down any research project they deemed dangerous. They could, in theory, pull the plug on the entire operation if they believed the technology was moving too fast. This board was the brake pedal, the last line of defense between a trillion-dollar race and the safety of 8 billion people. Now, most viewers probably think the board was just a group of executives in suits rubber-stamping decisions. Far from it. The board included people who had dedicated their careers to AI safety, people who genuinely believed that artificial intelligence, if mishandled, could pose a threat to human civilization. They were not motivated by profit. They were motivated by fear. The scientifically informed, entirely rational fear that building something smarter than ourselves without proper safeguards could end very badly. And for a while, the system worked. The board pushed back on aggressive timelines. They insisted on safety testing before public releases. They maintained at least some commitment to publishing research so the broader scientific community could identify potential dangers. But the system had a fatal flaw. It depended entirely on the board maintaining its authority. And authority, in a world driven by money, is only as strong as the financial foundation it rests on. The moment Microsoft's billions flowed in, the balance of power began to shift. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily, like water seeping through cracks in a dam. With Microsoft's investment came pressure. Pressure to deliver products faster, pressure to commercialize discoveries, pressure to compete with Google, which was rapidly advancing its own AI systems. Every month, the gap between what the safety-minded board wanted and what the profit-driven investors demanded grew wider. Then, in November 2022, something happened that changed everything. OpenAI released ChatGPT to the public. Within 5 days, it had over 1 million users. Within 2 months, it had over 100 million. It became the fastest-growing consumer application in the history of the Internet. The world was amazed. The media celebrated. And inside OpenAI, the balance of power tilted permanently. Because ChatGPT was not just a research project anymore. It was a product used by governments, corporations, students, doctors, lawyers, and ordinary people around the world. It generated revenue. It attracted more investment. It put OpenAI on a trajectory toward a valuation that would eventually exceed $1 trillion. And here is the cruel irony. The very success that proved OpenAI's technology worked also proved that the safety-first approach was commercially inconvenient. Every week spent on safety testing was a week that competitors could use to catch up. Every cautious decision about what to release and when was a potential loss of market share. The nonprofit mission and the for-profit reality were now on a direct collision course. The board members saw the collision coming. They tried to pump the brakes. They tried to slow things down. And for that, they were about to pay the ultimate price.